So today we're doing a stylized character process video. Hey guys, welcome back to TutsByKai. I'm Kai, and today we're back again. I'm sharing my process with you guys because a lot of you guys asked me about characters or stylized characters or stuff like that. So I figured we'll do that today. Some of the biggest things I can tell you is to go for a more exaggerated type of thing. You can see here. We're drawing the Joker, by the way. You saw that from the thumbnail, though. But you can see here, I'm giving him really big eyes, really small mouth. I'm going for a cuter style Joker. Maybe he's upset right now. The Batman has amazing toys. I don't know. But anyway, I like to do bigger features. So I like to do bigger eyes and bigger hands and bigger feet and stuff like that. Because that always gets the point across of cute, and I just like the way it looks better. You can see here, giant thumb, and I like the use of erasing portions of your art and then replacing it with other lines. For instance, I just erased part of his arm to create a glove-looking thing by putting those little notches on the ends of his wrists there. As you can tell, I mentioned this before in some of my other art tutorial process videos, but I just drew that kind of small, and I just scaled it up afterwards, and now I'm just doing a little bit of detailing now. It's more comfortable for me to draw smaller. That's always a tip. So yeah, again, with line art, now we're moving into the line art. The sketch is pretty much over now. I don't like to focus too much on things, especially in a cuter, more stylistic kind of thing. I don't like to focus on detail. I don't like doing that anyway. My style is pretty minimalistic here. You can see I'm adding a little bit more detail in the glove there, just because I like to use as little lines to create as much detail as possible. I mentioned that before, but I think it's really necessary to do, especially with this cuter style, like I mentioned. So if you look at like art from a really cutesy 2D movie or something, and then you look at a 2D movie that's not supposed to be cute or has a lot more detail, you see the difference in the level of detail is much higher. You see their hands usually aren't huge and whatnot. Giant thumb here, by the way, giant thumb. And what I like to do, especially in more stylistic things, is to vary the line weights very heavily. So what I mean by that is, if you don't know, line weights are pretty much the difference between how thick or how thin your line is in your line art. And you can see here I'm using that to extreme measures. Some parts of this are much thicker than other parts. And I think it gives it a nicer, kind of cutier, bouncier kind of thing. I don't know. Did I just say cutier? That's not a word. Whatever. You see, I have the little belt there, too, which I thought was funny with a little smiley face on it because of the Joker. But yeah, just adding in a couple more details here and there. I don't want to overdo it. Add in shoulder pads. I'm going to add in knee pads later on. It's a little tiny little flaps on his suit and the tie, of course, the little lines on his tie. And I mentioned this a couple of times before as well. I like to do the little lines on the sides of specific parts in specific materials. You see they give a little bit of texture there. And once again, with these ears, this is a simple style. So I'm going through and I'm just making sure all the lines here on the head are actually not the same thickness. Because a lot of people have problems making circles, which is totally understandable. Do not get discouraged if you're having trouble drawing a circle, because that's a very weird thing, because it has to be like perfect or else it looks like an oval. Just use the circle tool. And then if you want it not to be a complete circle, just go back through and erase some pieces like I just did. You see the top of his head is much thinner than the top of his head. The top of his head is much thinner than the bottom of his head, is what I'm trying to say. So the top of his head is way thinner, has less weight to it, and then the other piece is more thick. Once again, I'm erasing lines here and creating like little pant thingies, just little things that kind of flare out the bottom there. Get a little bit more detail in there. And there's the knee pads that I was talking about. Going back to the ears, which I just skipped over to talk about other things. Very simple. Just two lines in there, just to give the illusion of an ear and then a little piece of your ear. I like doing that a lot. It gets the job done. And once again, with this circle here, I have problems with circles too, obviously. And what I do is I just take either the circle tool, but if I want it to be an oval, and I want to have like the top of his eye is supposed to be thinner than the bottom. It's kind of like supposed to spread out a little bit. I use the anchor tool. I use the anchor tool and I just go ahead and draw lines all the way around the eye, and then I erase the pieces that aren't completely circular, and then I just fill them back in. And as you can tell right there with the eye, I wanted the line weight to be much thicker on the outside of the eye than in the inside. So you'll see here much better, and I just thicken it up right there a little bit. Give it a little bit more depth and a little bit more interest The line weight adds interest, which is a lot of fun. It's a lot better, especially in my opinion. I like doing those 3 little circles in the eyes, which is kind of anime, and this little teardrop is kind of anime as well, because it just makes everything look cuter. It just makes everything look cuter. Maybe he's a little tear in his eye, and 3 little dots. But yeah, and then of course I'm just going in and doing the detailing of the Joker's face and all of his, you know, his makeup on his mouth and whatever and whatnot. His little tiny piece of hair. And for hair, a lot of people ask me about hair. I think it's a little bit more difficult to do hair in line art than it is to actually paint it without lines, you know, more realistically. I think it's easier to paint it realistically, which is strange because I don't do a lot of realistic renders. But with line art, you kind of have to get on all those little individual hairs in there, which can be a little bit more tedious, especially if you're trying to go for a more simple style. So I just kind of went with a little bit of spiky spikes and tried to keep it as simple as possible. I don't like adding too much, like I said before. I like keeping it pretty simple. And yeah, so like I said, the brush that I'm using is the same brush that I always use. It's a completely solid brush. It has no fade, has no opacity, has no, you know, Gaussian blur, nothing like that. It's completely solid, and I just have a size on there. So with my pressure sensitivity, it only changes the size of the brush. A lot of people ask me about that. And I don't have a sketch brush. If you noticed in the beginning of the video, I don't have a sketch brush. I use the same exact brush that I use for my line art. I just like the way it is. I like the way it feels. And I just make it a blue color instead of making it black, so you can easily see it once you're done. I just make it a blue color. Now with this color that I'm actually coloring in right now, a lot of people ask me about color. I'm going to do a specific tutorial just of coloring something. We're going to color something on camera live, and I'll just do that. But for now, I try and keep in mind I want to do softer colors. Like I always mention, don't do harsh colors. They're not very nice to look at, and they're definitely not cute, especially for this stylistic portrait right here. So I'm going for smoother colors, and you can see I filled in the background with this nice gray. It's kind of like TutsByKai gray. The gray that I use, the grayish blue that I use on all my stuff, it's kind of the same color. It's not actually the same color, but it's very close to it. And I use a neutral color. You probably heard this before, because if you use white, then your color is most likely going to be darker than you want it, and if you use black, it's probably going to be brighter than you actually want it, because you see all the white or all the black around it, and your eye gets skewed to thinking that the actual color you're drawing is lighter or darker than what it actually is. So use more neutral color, like, you know, a nice bluish gray, or just something that's a mid-tone. So you don't want it to be super bright, you don't want it to be super dark. Once again, with colors, I'm not using solid white. The only thing I'm using solid white on is his eyes. Everything else is a very, very off-white with a little bit of blue in there, because it just looks better. It looks better and looks nicer. It doesn't look as harsh. But yeah, so I don't like to do shading. I don't like to do a lot of shading. I don't like to do a lot of stuff with color. A lot of people will tell you it's easier to color if you select all the portions of everything you want to be blue or purple or red or whatever, and then color them all together. I don't think that's true. I think it's easier just to go through and color each thing by hand without doing any selecting or anything like that. And plus, it's a bit relaxing, especially from the tenseness of doing line art. And I actually hid the line art right there for a second because I thought it looks pretty cool. Always looks pretty cool without the line art. But once again, went to go color the line art, a color to soften it up as well. And here I am doing the shadow. Almost done with this piece already, which is pretty nice. And you can see with the more stylistic characters, I like to do exaggerated everything. So like I said, the hands are exaggerated, the eyes are exaggerated, everything is bigger, everything's broader, everything is not more saturated, but everything's more bright and more bouncy kind of. And then of course we have the final render here, and you can see his pose is just completely slanted. He's like, I just feel he's leaning into Batman, and just, where'd you get all those toys, Batman? I'm upset. I want those. Where'd you get those nice toys? You know, something like that. I don't know. But just kind of picture what you want, and then just heighten it to a level of cartoonism that you think is appropriate. Maybe you want to go for a SpongeBob level of ridiculous. Maybe you want to go for Amazing World of Gumball level of ridiculous. But whatever you do, just make sure you enjoy it. Make sure you like the way it's coming out. And the great thing about doing cartoon renders is that you don't have to follow any rules. Of course, a head is supposed to be a head, but it can look like anything you want it to look like. So that's it for today's tutorial process kind of video. I'll see you guys in the next one. More art videos and other videos are going to be coming very soon. Hope you boys and girls enjoyed today's video. I'll see you in the next one, but until then, bye-bye.